Hey, welcome back to Soul Speak with Meg Michaelson. If you're new, thank you so much for being here. If you're a repeat, I appreciate you came back. And also please share with others because I really love getting this information out there. Today's episode, we are going to continue conversations about emotional availability and emotional unavailability. I have a really cool young man with me, and he agreed to be on today's podcast, which I'm so grateful for. So, McClane, if you can tell us a little bit about yourself and why you are working on your emotional availability.
Thank you. My name is McClane. I'm 25, and really emotional availability for me has kind of become front and center over the last 3 years or so. I can't really pinpoint exactly the time, but just in my early 20s here, life's kind of hitting me in the face pretty drastically. I kind of have been digging personally and with my family over the last few years, and it's become apparent to me that there's a little bit more to life. Um, and, I've been digging and digging and digging, and, that's how I found you. So,
Thank you. And there's so much I want to ask you, and certainly you feel free to jump in and talk about things you want to. So when you look back at your history and say as little or as much as you want, were you raised in a home where you were taught how to be emotionally available, how it was safe to speak with others emotionally? Or was it a little bit harder to navigate feelings in your home?
I'd like to say so. I know my mom, I was raised by a single mother for a long time. I know that she would say probably yes. And I would say yes too. But looking back on it, I don't think as a kid I was perceptive enough to pick up on it. It was kind of always underlying there, but I didn't kind of come online to kind of realizing what a childhood means to that, probably until my early 20s or late teens.
And kudos to your mom for raising you as a single mom. And I want to insert something in that because when I raised my kids, I'm a single mom too. And it's really painful for some parents and actually adults that are non parents to not be fixers. And when we feel like we're being emotionally available, which I thought I was during my raising kids years, I was actually trying to fix it. And that's not necessarily creating a safe environment, trying to fix instead of hear and be mindful of the availability. So, does that make sense to you?
Yeah, it totally does. And one thing that's interesting too is depending on the kid as well, because, as the mother, you can have the best intentions always, but, you're only kind of responsible for your part. And then, it's two ways. So the kid is responsible for their part too. And sometimes I can feel like that's frustrating for the mom or the dad for that matter. Um, but one thing that's interesting to me is like what you just said. If you go to, fix those things sometimes, what would happen with me, and I think it, might happen to other people, depending on how perceptive they are, is it becomes, as you're growing up, you're trying to find yourself, right? And your self-esteem. And that's super, super, super tricky. At least it is for me. I think it's something that everybody, as they're growing up, um, needs to find, and it's a different journey for every person. But for me, I was a people pleaser, big time. So, kind of going off what you said there, with being careful not to correct, is if you have a child that's a people pleaser, it actually clouds their kind of self-esteem and figuring out who they are, because then they become, well, I want to fix it, but in the way that my mom wants to fix it. And in doing that, you lose yourself a little bit, because it's not coming from you, it's coming from something else. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And that was so well said. Thank you. Because our intention is to help. And sometimes, as parents or as lovers or as friends, we just end up getting in the way. And that's not our intention. And so to expand on, am I being heard? Which is part of that learning to be emotionally vulnerable, being in that safe space. When you said before, it's also the kids and the parents, and let's take that into a relationship, it's also both partners, because we come in, my belief, we come in with our own wounding. I don't believe we come in as pure, unadulterated, everything's perfect. We have, if anyone knows astrology, you'll have your sun, your moon, and your rising sign, and then a lot more. And I have 5 children. One's a Virgo, one's a Pisces, one's an Aquarian, two are Libras. And they came in with their own stuff, and they communicate with me differently. So it is exactly right what you said. It is the parent child, but it's also partner partner. We can be a good communicator, possibly, but we also want to honor where the other person is at and not force communication either, because that's part of creating that safe environment. So have you ever been in a relationship with someone where you didn't feel safe being honest with?
Yeah, definitely. Um, and for me, that was another, I keep coming back to self-esteem. It's all kind of self-esteem. For some reason, it's right next to um, self-confidence, self-esteem, and then also your true self, or like being honest with yourself. Those are all three of those are wrapped up together close to me. Um, but yeah, I've definitely had that issue where, I would say, like, I wanted to be honest, or I wanted to, have that open line of communication. But I myself had this projection of the other person, and perhaps like a view that I held, or just like an urge that I had to say something or to be myself, kind of let loose. Um, I had a projection that they wouldn't accept me, or I would, you know, upset them or piss them off, and they would leave me, or they wouldn't talk to me for a long time. Um, yeah, just the fear of upsetting someone, and probably something that wasn't that big of a deal, but inside it was brewing. And but yeah, I like to I think it's a me thing, as opposed to, how dare this person not be emotionally available. It usually stems from me.
Yeah, I agree. And also, we tend to send out a signal because everything is vibration. And so, if we're not ready for emotional availability, we might choose somebody so subconsciously that is either really needy or also emotionally unavailable. Like attracts like. And so, it's wherever we are in the vibrational scale. So when we get in that pattern of not feeling safe, we rarely bring in someone that is healthy because we're not ready. And so when you look back at your partners, was there a theme in who you were dating? Was there some sort of a pattern with the people you were choosing? And that can go with romantic partners, but also with friends.
Yeah, I would say so. Um, yeah, because I mean, I'm not changing that crazy from, partner to partner, friend to friend. Um, but yeah, that's interesting to think about. That I suppose every single one of them is a reflection of myself in some way. Yeah.
Yeah, where you were at the time.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And we talked a little bit about prior to this via email about emotions and where we feel it. When you're feeling that shut down, when you're feeling you are not ready to share your emotions or to talk honestly, and you withdraw, what happens? What's your physical reaction? And then what is your emotional reaction to that?
The physical for me has definitely felt kind of mid stomach, um, and kind of up through, a little bit, almost like the same area where anxiety would be felt. And then mentally, it's usually frustration, and it can range from a little frustration, but those frustrations stack over time, and when you're emotionally unavailable, those are stacking pretty close together and pretty frequently.
Yeah, yeah. And so then do you tend to, well, what I know of you is you will tend to withdraw, and then maybe that inflammation is internal, but not so much external.
Right. Well, definitely withdrawing because it includes holding your tongue typically,
Yeah.
and trying to fit in. Um, so yeah, it's not so much physical withdrawal for me as it is kind of being present but not at the same time. So um, I'm there, but I'm not.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm there, but I'm inside. I'm
Right.
not
Yep.
sharing externally.
Yep.
And then our mind can get quite active and tell a whole lot of stories.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah.
And some people, I want to just tell our audience, the viewers, the listeners, that we do it in different ways when we're not emotionally available. And even someone that is or thinks they're emotionally available isn't always, because it depends on where we are, our energy level, what's going on in that day, how we're handling everything in life. And there are other ways. McClane's is to withdraw from his voice, or he holds it in. And some people use jokes. There are a lot of people that use humor, sarcasm, as a way to deflect emotions, as a way to not talk about the things that now become a big white elephant in the room. And when you look back at your history, because you have been working on this, so prior to and in this now new pattern that you're establishing, that fear or lack of ability to communicate, did that ever come into your mind? Like, I don't even know how to communicate this stuff?
Yeah, it's sometimes because I mean, it sounds kind of silly because what a simple thing. There's what you want to communicate. The bridge to that is you just say it. It's like, well, why would that ever be an issue for anyone? Um, but it's a little deeper than that because sometimes I don't know what I want to say. I know that I want to portray something, but because I've been doing that for so long, my my need, like, it's by the time it comes up, I've already concealed it. Um, so it's hard to re-access that. It's like a fleeting thought. You're like, oh, how do I get that back? It's like, well, I guess I got to sit here and wait until it comes back again.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
yeah, that's definitely a good one, and or a hard one. Um, but the way I've kind of tried to get over that is be self-aware, that I do have that. So if I can catch it before it happens, as twisted as that sounds, you can emotionally put yourself in the mindset and focus to kind of pre-catch those things. I do catch myself going, "Oh, that's interesting. Maybe you know, even a week ago, I wouldn't have let that happen." And I'll be like, "All right, good, we're making progress." But
so you are allowing yourself to notice when you're shining a little brighter.
right, yeah,
Yeah.
or
And that's
yeah,
huge. It's really, really important that we catch ourselves when we've made the changes we want to make. That helps our self-esteem, that helps our self-confidence, like you talked about earlier. That also raises our vibration. We're noticing not just where we mess up, but we're noticing the goodness. We're noticing where we are scoring, which is huge.
Right.
Yeah. And before you said, it sounds stupid to not know what to say. There's not very many people, unfortunately, that really speak their truth in kind, healthy ways. It's all a learning curve. And part of that is because we don't know how, because it wasn't modeled. So that is not uncommon. It's unfortunately really uncommon that we just don't know how. And you are taking the time to learn and to be less reactive. And like you said, catch yourself when you're doing something and catch yourself when you're noticing that pattern. So that's beautiful. And when asked to express emotions, someone I'm working with doesn't like to express the emotions because it represses them, because in whatever way, in whatever pattern, they have decided that if they're not perfect, they're not enough. And especially for pleasers. If we don't do it well, then we're not enough. And then what happens to your self-esteem? Then what happens to your energy level? When you're feeling like, well, I messed that up, or I don't know how, I'm not enough. So when do you feel that? How does that make you feel? And if you're willing, where do you feel that in your body?
Yeah, growing up in Catholic schools, I grew up in Catholic schools. I kind of adopted a way of thinking that I kind of didn't become aware of until I was probably in eighth grade. Um, but it was very much I was living outside of myself and through my teachers and my peers. So all behavior would be filtered through what my peers think about me and what my teachers think about me. And that was like an evolved learned behavior because um, as long as those things were going well in life, especially the teachers, the I say it like this: if the teachers were happy, the peers were happy, and then the parents were happy, and you had kind of control of your entire life. Um, and that hurt me growing up because as I started to get into high school, that was my default. So it was the same thing. If, my teachers are happy with me, my peers are happy with me, then my parents will be happy with me. But as I grew up, there was more and more of a disconnect between my actual self and the self that I think is myself, that I'm kind of facading and portraying to, the outside world. And it was never a nefarious thing. It was never like, oh, I'm tricking all these people that, I'm a likable person or anything like that. It was more of, I just had no idea who I was because I was holding up and performing for everybody around me. And that was a coping mechanism that I learned growing up with the pressure of, Catholic school. This is how you act. This is how you think, even. And you better not let me catch you thinking or acting any other way. Um, so,
Yeah.
yeah, and that feeling,
Yeah.
same thing. That comes with. It's very very heady. It's in your head, and it comes with spinning, um, like false projections onto other people about what they're thinking about you. And it's very dynamic and it's constant everywhere. It's with every single person that's around you. Um, and yeah,
Yeah. Beautifully said. And that's that pleaser and an empath. You're
big time.
reading people's energy all the time. Of course, most of us were never taught we were doing that.
Right.
And absolutely, you're in your head because you start second guessing, double checking,
Hmm.
looking around you, and it goes right to the gut. So the sixth chakra, which is the mind, is connected to the third chakra, which is our self esteem. And you said it so well. You're out there projecting, you're out there gathering all the information so you can feel safe as a pleaser. And you're not in here. You're not inside you. You're not checking in with your heart. And then we lose track of what we want. People that I work with that are long-term pleasers that are older than you sometimes don't even know what kind of food they like anymore. So that you're starting younger is beautiful. And you are doing some great work. And you feel it. So that's even better that you notice it and you feel it. Now, a question you threw out to me, and I really like this, is, and I'm going to just repeat this if it's okay, because I thought it was just so well said. You know how when you close your eyes and bring attention to any place in your body, like your right ring finger or your left shoulder blade, where should that energy be focused when you're going through your day?
Right.
Where should your energy reside? Beautiful question, big question. And I want to hear your thoughts on that. Where do you feel like you are feeling your energy? And why are you noticing it in your right ring finger or your left shoulder? When that's happening, is it an abundant feeling or is it a tight, painful feeling?
Well, so the reason I posed that question is because I'm in my head a lot, and I'm in even the area that isn't my body, that kind of is it's my head, but it feels like it's not my body. And I was thinking about that last night, and I was like, that's interesting, because when I walk around, sometimes I'm not even feeling any energy, and that's because I'm in my head usually. Um, so that's why I posed that, because I was laying down and I was thinking, like, that's interesting. You can channel that energy, and you know you can be present. You can imagine you could do it right now. You could close your eyes. You could bring your energy to your right ring finger, and you're like, okay, boop, there I am. I'm right now. I'm in my right ring finger. Um, and I I know the answer isn't you should be in your right ring finger when you're walking around town, but I don't know. I
Yeah.
don't know. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's a question that I, it's a very remarkable question, but it's also such an important question, because when you just said you were oftentimes in your mind all day long, I call that a brain in a jar. In those old, well, I don't know if you guys remember those old movies, like with Frankenstein, there was a lab and there was a brain in a jar. And that's what that reminds me of, when, as humans, we are in our head so much and so disconnected from our body. We can drive 5 miles or 30 miles. We have no idea where we are or what sign is next. Like, wait, how did I get here? Because we're thinking, thinking, thinking. We're not using our 5 senses. So when you're noticing and you just directly put your attention into your right ring finger and you realized, yeah, I can do that. We want to do that to the body all day long. That's the beauty of the 5 senses. And I brought this up in other episodes. If we live in the 5 senses, we would worry way less. We would learn to be more present. We would be less scattered. We would be more joyful if we would live in the 5 senses. So that means I'm feeling where my breath is going. If I'm inhaling and I'm allowing myself to expand my belly and my back, now I'm in my 3rd chakra, which is my self-esteem center. I'm giving myself that moment. So your question, where do we put it throughout the day? Short answer is to allow yourself to notice where you're feeling tension. Not pretend it's not there. We'll sit at the desk or sit at the computer or stand in one position because we got to get something done and we feel pain in our shoulder and we just ignore it. That's a burden. And we want to allow ourselves to put our attention there, not in a way that is saying, oh my gosh, this is killing me and I'm just going to ignore it. How we could do it in a way that says, I'm going to inhale and exhale until this area relaxes, because that area is calling my attention. So that's one way to take our mindfulness. Where do we want to put our attention? And the other way is to bring it down into the lower body. Take the breath into the heart. Where should we be putting our energy? In our body throughout the day, not in the head. Unless we're going to do a breathing where we're expanding our mind and allowing it to open so cool ideas can come rushing in. Otherwise, we really want to get the breath into the chest, into the back, into the hips and the groin and the legs. Focus on what it feels like to be in the body when we're taking a walk, when we're trying to put something down, whether it's a piece of paper or our keys. If we put our keys on the counter and remind ourselves with our hand to touch them, that's where we're putting our attention. We won't forget where our keys are. But when we're up in our mind all the time, we cause so much more chaos. So getting your energy into your physical body, not the mind, but the lower chakras, well, even the throat, the heart, the belly, the hips, the groin, the legs, the feet. And everyone that does that on a regular basis notices how much calmer they are. And then life feels a little less chaotic. Long answer to your question.
Yeah.
And with that same, when you're looking at how you're feeling and how that resides in the body, when we worry, we're up in our head. When we're feeling lonely, we maybe started in our head with a thought, but humor me a minute. When you feel lonely, where do you feel it in your body? What happens to your physical body when you get that sense of loneliness? And you can even bring up in your mind's eye an example and
That's what I'm trying to
memory.
do. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, that's it's a hollow. It's in my shoulders and my upper back right now. Yeah, and the heart.
In the heart.
Mm-hmm.
And do things start to feel a little lower and slower?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And we all experience loneliness, every single human. And then we can all get out of it. Like one way, and because you aren't in that same place that you were at some point in your life, you're in a different place now. What are some things that you do to get out of that feeling of loneliness?
Well, the quickest one, which is not the healthiest one, is distract myself. And that's, probably the worst thing you can do is I pick up my phone and I see what's going on in the world, distract myself. And so,
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
a healthy way of doing that I've been doing, and I'm not sure if it was you that taught me this, but it's taking a very, very deep breath. And then once you've done the complete deep breath, do another one, and not through the mouth, but through the nose, like do a quick another one. And what I learned is that kind of snaps open your alveoli, the sacs that are in your um, lungs, and it's fresh oxygen, but it kind of zaps your pulmonary system really quick, and your body kind of resets slightly, just a little bit. And yeah, that would work for loneliness. And for me, I've been using it for anxiety quite a bit, or just
That's really
to get
cool.
out of my
You
head.
did, yeah, you didn't learn that from me, and I love that. And um, connecting that to the chakra system, which is that soul body, that also, because it's in the lungs. Lungs are also connected to self-esteem, but the heart and the lungs, of course, work together, and you gave them a boost. And
Mhm.
so it goes right to, okay, all's possible, all's good again. That's great, because that's moving up the vibrational scale. So that's beautiful. And that's free, right? You can do it as much as you need to,
Yep.
because sometimes we need it more than others.
Yep.
Yeah. I'm going to bring up an uncomfortable subject because this comes to me from some people that it's uncomfortable to some people. As when we're emotionally disconnected, especially more on the masculine side than the feminine side, people use sex as a way to connect emotionally. And women that are disconnected from their partner emotionally don't even want to have sex, some women, not all, because they're not connected emotionally. As a guy, when you are navigating your life and you felt emotionally disconnected, did that keep you sexually disconnected? You're an empath, so it might be different for you than some guys that are not an empath.
Mm-hmm.
Let me rephrase that question.
Sure.
Was that a way for you to feel emotionally connected to somebody?
Yes, and I knew that's what you were getting at.
Thank you.
But yes, certainly. And I can't speak for someone that isn't an empath. But that's definitely, I mean, that's like the most emotional thing you can do. At least for me. So for sure, that's a way to, yeah, for sure.
And I'm going to expand that because
Mhm.
this is what I see as the disconnect. Because some people will say, now I'm emotionally connected to you. But that doesn't mean we're going to talk about our feelings.
Right.
So it's that instant connection, but is it really an emotional connection?
Right. Yeah. It's like the hollow brother of it, where, yeah, like it's like chewing, how should I put this? It's like chewing like a cake flavored bubble gum. So it tastes like cake. You might fool yourself that you're eating cake, but you're not eating cake.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. It's like because when I work with some singles or couples and this is too much information, but it's kind of funny.
Sure.
Someone will want to have sex with someone, but they won't fart in front of them. Or
Oh, okay.
they'll have sex with somebody, or they won't say when they're sad or mad. They'll just slam drawers.
Ironic, yeah.
And right. And that is so we can falsely think that's an emotional connection. And because it is, but that's not true emotional intimacy. It's if you're having a physical connection with somebody and you're having an emotional connection, then it is the deepest form of connection.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's also kind of, well, yeah, I guess you can have, yeah, you can express, you can do sex in more than one way, you know? But that is, like if that were, I'm sure it's happened to me, but if that was happening to me, that would be a good thing because I don't step back and think about that very often. Um, but it would be interesting to think, well, hey, what's going wrong if um, I can get away with, having sex, but yeah, like I'm scared to talk emotionally. Like I wonder if maybe my mind in both of those scenarios, like while I'm having sex and at the time where it's appropriate to be emotionally available, I wonder if both of those things need some attention.
Yeah. Right. Right. And then we start to bring in a whole relationship if that's what someone is seeking, is a whole relationship.
Mhm.
Our country would be, or our world would be a lot less lonely if we would want to have a whole relationship.
Right.
You talked about this a little bit before. How have you been learning emotional intelligence? You kind of talked about where you recognized you weren't. And what are some ways? Are you reading books? Are you watching videos? Are you working with people? How are you learning how to become more emotionally intelligent? Because a lot of our listeners really do want to know.
Yeah, so it's definitely being like aware that like that's what I'm looking for. Like same, like you buy a new car, all of a sudden you are driving around and you see that new car all over the place. If you're looking for something, you'll find it. So like, kind of manifesting and putting your energy and your attention towards looking for that, and then being open to it throughout the day and the week. So it'll come in different forms. It might come in a conversation with a friend that you've had for years and years and years. And then all of a sudden, because you have your, you know, EQ goggles on, your emotional intelligence goggles on, um, you're having a conversation with your friend about this, and you kind of get a little nugget, or like your partner, or your family, or all of a sudden your YouTube feed has these little things because you've been Googling stuff, or you get like a book recommendation, or you find, wonderful people on the internet that will meet you over Zoom and talk to you about it. Um, yeah, just being open, um, to kind of whatever the universe is going to put out there for you, and then taking action on it when it does, and realizing that, oh, that just manifested. Now it's time to harvest.
Exactly. You send it out there, it comes in all these cool forms. There's so much great information now. And your next step is to take action and then practice. We got to then practice. And the universe will give us opportunities to practice too, which is pretty cool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the amount of information that I'll get into a topic, and I'll listen to a 3 hour long, 4 hour long podcast about something and just have it on constantly, and I'll be like, that's really profound, that's really interesting, and then I'll turn the podcast off, and then nothing. I kind of like the nugget of like, oh wow, I did a good thing. I I listened to the self-improving podcast. I'm in such a great mood. All right, thanks. And then I don't do anything for it. So like taking action on things, for sure. And then you kind of start to realize what people talk about when they're like, this is a lot of work. And you're like, yeah, whatever. It's not lifting weights. It's not pouring concrete in the summer. It's not roofing, but it's a different kind of work. And it certainly is work. It certainly is work.
And it can be exhausting to open your
Absolutely.
heart and connect the voice and let it out. Can be really tiring. You can be drained after having that experience. Because why? Because we held it in and sweat so much thinking about it.
Right.
And then when the opportunity comes, because the universe will give you an opportunity, even if you just listened for an hour and a half and did nothing, you planted the seed. So something is going to come.
Right.
Right. You're still planting seeds. You're still doing something. And then you look for opportunities, or the opportunities come to you. So you can learn to practice to feel safer. So what would you like your relation? Well, I'm going to back up because there's one more question I want to ask about that. So when you look back at the people that you've had in your life, are there people that you have felt safer being honest with than others? And what did the safe person provide for you that the unsafe person did not?
Yeah, interesting. For sure, yes. And this one's going to be a hard one to articulate. I'll do my best. But for me, there are certain people, I call them angels, that you'll meet throughout life. And there's almost no rhyme or reason to like where you'll meet this person. There's not a place that you go or a time of year or anything like that. But you'll meet them and you'll click and you'll know. And if like someone's listening right now and they've had that experience, they know exactly what I'm talking about right now. If they're listening and they don't know what I'm talking about, that hasn't happened, and that's really unfortunate. And I hope it does happen at some point, because it's a beautiful feeling, and it's also an undeniable feeling. I would imagine it's sometimes, yeah. I was thinking about this question, and it's a very, very, very hard one to put into words, because I know that me saying what I'm saying right now And I've said absolutely nothing. Meg, you know exactly what I'm talking about. So I almost want to give that right to you and see if you can do it do it justice as far as how you recognize that person, because for me it's intangible and tangible at the same time.
Yeah,
I
no, that's
can't tell you.
beautiful. There are those people, and my belief is they come at moments when that's what we need,
Mm-hmm.
and to help us learn to trust. And what are they all doing? They're listening. You feel safe because there is an energetic connection. Now, I talked about a sacred container where they're not slamming your ideas down or arguing with you. There's a sacred container, and whether or not they're even realizing it or you're realizing it, or the connection between you guys is realizing that there's a sacred container. Some people have more of that in their life than others, as far as there are people you'll click with and there are people you won't. And the people you won't, there's usually a lesson in that for us to learn to use our voice even when we don't feel safe. There's growth there. But those people, those angels that you're talking about, they make it easier, because it's a wonderful gift to have people that you are safe talking to. And that's because you're doing an energetic exchange. If you could see it as a color, or the vibrational energy, it would be, it's moving to them and they're receiving it and moving it back.
Right.
It's not
Well,
choppy or cut off. It is a beautiful exchange.
right. And also, I just thought of this, like when you're talking to certain people, it's kind of superficial, like niceties. You're being polite, cordial. There are some people that when they are going through, just they're being cordial. They're not only being cordial, they're also as into that conversation as they would be if you're having they're present. I guess is another way of putting that. Um, yeah, and so like even an answer to your other question. Um, it's yeah, I think you hit it on the head when you said listening, because that's a very present thing. And when you sit down with someone, like there's those people that you're having a conversation with them, but as soon as you stop talking, they start talking immediately, and they haven't, they were using your time that you were talking to think about the next thing that they were saying. Where these people would be present when you say something, they listen and they actually take that in, like all the way in. And then, when they come up with the next thing to say, I think, the listening thing for sure.
Listening, because they're
Yep.
listening with
Like
their ears, but they're also listening with their being.
right. Exactly.
They've softened their being and they're allowing it to come in. And so when we want to bring in people that we feel safer with, the more we allow ourselves to be a sacred container for other people, now we're bringing in that match, right? Because it's a vibration. It's all a vibration.
Right.
So as you're moving through this beautiful phase of learning and growth for yourself, what would you like your relationships to look like? Your friendships, your partnerships? What would that look like that it hasn't looked like in the past?
Um, for sure that there is for sure that when we're communicating day to day or we're hanging out, um, that I don't have that feeling of crap. I shouldn't have said that, or the second guessing of things that I'm about to say. Um, and really that it has nothing to do with them. It has everything to do with me and how I think about myself, and the mindset that I put myself in before I'm even around that person. Um, but I would like to be in that appropriate mindset already, before I'm with that person. Just if somebody were to walk up on me at a coffee shop randomly, that I would already be in that mindset. It's not something that I have to, like put my football helmet on and my eye black on and get ready for this conversation. I want it to be something that I'm basically existing always there, without, I mean, I don't want to say without effort, but seamlessly, effortlessly.
And then you'll draw in more people that will allow you to do that. And we'll still have people that it'll be a little harder with.
Right.
But those significant relationships will be that flow that you're talking about, because you're also creating the flow. So from my understanding, it was you want someone that you can share how you feel with. And so you're not holding it in. You get to share it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So when you started this journey of really working on your ability to be authentic and emotionally vulnerable in healthy ways, how has your life changed? Have you noticed any more, what I love the word magic? Have you noticed any more magic in your life?
Yeah, I was just thinking the exact same word for some reason. Um, uh, yeah, it's magic the way that how you think and what you put out, you get back. Um, yeah, like what you put in is what you get out. Um, and that also sounds like a really simple, kind of foo-foo, um, but it's like magic. It is magic. That you will, the same way you would turn on a light, in the middle of the night, like a summer night in Wisconsin, you turn on a light and poof, there's 100 little flying insects. It's the
Yep.
same. If you turn on your positivity light, the same thing happens. All those people just are attracted to it, and you're like, wow, we started a party here just by turning my light on.
Beautiful.
It's super. It's crazy. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, magic is the best way to put that, because it feels otherworldly.
This has been such a pleasure and an honor. You are a really remarkable young guy, and I just feel so honored to know you. Thank you for being with us today. And I know anyone that listens or watches is going to be so very glad they did. So have a beautiful week, McClane, and keep letting that positive light shine.
Thank you so much, Meg. Have a good one.
Thank you. Hey, listeners, thanks again for joining me. If you want to learn more about me, services I offer, who I am, please check out my website, megmichaelson.com. Also, there you can join my newsletter. I do the best job I can to send it out monthly, no guarantees. Follow me on Instagram and YouTube. Thanks again for coming. I'll see you next time.